A picture machine, common or garden variety. And today on Science Session we're going to take a close-up look at one to see if we can't find out just how it works. But rather than go poking about inside something as small as this, I thought we'd have a shot at building a jumbo-sized version here in the studio. And with a bit of luck we'll end up with something a good deal bigger than this little fellow, but containing essentially the same bits and pieces. Well, how does it work? There are two basic things to remember. First, certain materials are affected by light. This bit of paper has turned dark wherever light has been allowed to fall on it. Secondly, a light-tight box forms the basis of any camera. Now, here's the box that forms the heart of our camera. It's not light-proof at the moment, its front and its back are missing. Put my arm through if I want to. So, before it'll work as a camera, we've got to change it. We've got to control the light that's getting in through the front, and we've got to control it in such a way that it forms an image at the back of the box. Now, you may have ideas about how we should set about doing this, but while you're thinking about that, let's do something about the back. And here we'll need some sort of light-sensitive material to record whatever image is going to get produced there. In the old days, photographers used to use plates of glass like this, coated with thin layers of light-sensitive salts, which I'm now scraping off. But today, the commonest material used in camera is photographic film. It's a flexible strip of celluloid coated with chemicals to make it sensitive to light. Now, of course, film comes in a few different varieties. There's color film and there's black and white film. There's film which will make prints, like these. There's film which will make slides to go in a projector, like these. You normally buy it in one of three ways. Wound up in a cassette, like this, or in a cartridge, like that, or simply in a roll, like that. Let's have a look at this roll of film. And the first thing to realize about any roll of film is that this stuff, which looks like paper, is not the light-sensitive material. In fact, it is just paper. But if we unroll some of it, we'll find, part-way down, the beginning of something else. There it is, a strip of celluloid. Now again, it's not the celluloid that's affected by light, it's the thin layer of chemicals on one side of it. Of course, I'm ruining this film by unrolling it. The paper backing strip is in fact designed to keep light away from the film until it's safely inside the camera. Also, on the backing strip, there are some numbers printed. That's just to show you how many pictures you've taken. But our camera takes film in a cartridge. Here it is. It's a molded case with film and paper backing already rolled up inside. So let's clear the decks here, and we start putting our camera together. Fit the film and the cartridge onto the back of our box, and we've made a start. Now, with the film safely in position, what we need is something on the front that will produce an image on the film. Perhaps you thought of a lens. But I wonder how many of you thought of putting a pinhole on the front. With just a pinhole, you can get a good image, but as you'll see, it does have its drawbacks. A box, a pin, and a hole. Any lighted object standing in front of the hole casts an image inside the box. The image is upside down because light from the object travels in straight lines. The image is quite clear, but it's also fairly dim. This is because only a little light can get through such a small hole. As a result, it's several seconds before the light can make much impression on the photographic film at the back. Can we improve the brightness of the image in some way? What happens if the pinhole is enlarged? Watch the image. Well, with the bigger hole, the image is certainly quite a bit brighter, but it's also more blurred. It's an interesting problem to work out afterwards, just why this happens. Now, watch what happens to the blurred image if we put a lens in front of the hole. The lens bends the light so that the image becomes sharp again. So a lens gives an image that is sharp as well as bright. It's easy to see just what the lens does if you look at an old-fashioned plate camera. Its lens is removable. Keep looking at the back of the camera, and all there is to see on the ground glass screen where the film would go is a white blur. But replace the lens, and presto, a sharp, bright image. Well, have we decided then what to put on the front? A pinhole would do, but a lens placed in front of a somewhat larger hole will give us a nice, sharp image, an image that is bright enough to affect the film quickly. Here's our lens, and here's the hole. Quite a bit larger than a pinhole, and the hole, by the way, is normally known in photography as the aperture. It fits just behind the lens, like this, to form the front of our camera. So very carefully, put it together, centering the lens up over the aperture. And there it is. Precision job. One problem sorted out. But immediately, there's another point to consider. At the moment, we've got no way of stopping the light coming through the lens. What we need then is a device to shut out the light and prevent it reaching the film until the exact moment when we want to take the photograph. And here's something that does that. It's called, very sensibly, a shutter. It spends most of its time looking like this, and you can't see light through it. But press the button, and it snaps open, just for a moment, or to be more precise, in this case, for about 1/80th of a second, and that's just about the right amount of time to record an image on the film at the back of our camera. So, I shall put the shutter in position behind the lens and the aperture. Spot of trouble, I've got to fit it together exactly correctly. There we are, and then I'll mount the completed unit in the front of our assembly. How about that? Well, we've now got a complete camera inside. All we need now is to put on the outer case, and we should land up with something that looks fairly familiar. So we'll get right on with that. Here's the front, the bit that your subject sees when you photograph him or her. Fit the inside in like that. Hold it securely. Here's the back. Lift up the cartridge just so it slides neatly in. Not sure I'd ever get a job on a camera production line. There we are, in she goes. Fits neatly together. Yeah, not a bad job. There's not much to say about the finished product. The winder on the back connects with the cartridge inside to wind on the film after each picture. The shutter mechanism sticks up in the front here, and this window connects with a smaller window at the back. It's the viewfinder. And if I look through there, I can get a pretty accurate idea of the photograph that I'm about to take. There. Well, I think the best thing to do is to go outside and test it, or rather, test out its baby brother to see how well or how badly it works. David agreed to test out the camera, provided he could bring his girlfriend Kim along. Kim wasn't too sure what she'd let herself in for, but she was looking forward to playing the photographic model. She'd assumed that David would want to get some pictures of her. What Kim had forgotten was David's interest in trains. David got one shot of her, then he thought he'd try a close-up.
Come in a bit closer. Take a close-up. That's it. That's it.
Pretty soon, he got distracted.
Here comes a fast one.
Taking second place to a lot of trains wasn't much fun, but Kim's black looks were in vain. When David had run out of expresses, he started photographing stopping trains.
Cheer up, I've run out of film.
You and your trains. Let's go and get the film developed.
Well, David and Kim got their film developed, and we've got some of their pictures here. We've enlarged them a bit to make them easier to see. They seem to have come out pretty well. David began, you remember, by taking pictures of Kim on the platform, and that one's come out very nicely. But what do you make of this one? Something strange has happened to Kim. She's come a bit closer and got a little blurred in the process. Now maybe we can find out why. You're looking at me right now through a camera, a television camera. And if I were to walk towards you, we could get some idea of what happened. All right, here I come. I'm about 3 meters away at the moment, coming closer, 2 meters now, closer still, about a meter, I suppose, and I've got myself all blurred. If I move back, how's that? Getting better? I'm in focus again. But if I move forward once again, I go out of focus. So it seems that a lens will give you a sharp picture of someone some distance away, but not necessarily be able to focus on them near too. Well, as you've guessed, there's a way around this. Watch what happens when I say the magic word to our cameraman. Ready? Focus! That feels a good deal better. Now let's find out how that happened. To focus on me now that I'm standing right up close to the cameraman has actually had to move the lens inside the television camera. Now as I walk backwards, he'll have to alter the position of the lens again if he's going to keep me in focus. And it works that way on an expensive photographic camera too. To take close-ups, you adjust the lens so that it moves a millimeter or two further away from the film. Watch. Can you see it coming out from the front of the camera? Now, of course, cameras with this sort of delicate engineering are very expensive. On a cheap camera, like the one we've been using, the lens is fixed in one position. You just have to take care not to get too close. And exactly how close you can get depends on exactly which camera you have. But usually, it's about 1.5 meters. Let's see what else David took. What do you make of this one? The front of the train has got badly blurred. Now, what's gone wrong here? It can't be out of focus. David's camera must be a good distance away from the train. But of course, the train is moving very fast, about 70 miles an hour. So perhaps it's because the train was moving when David clicked the shutter that this picture has come out blurred. I have an idea that David's next 2 photos bring out this point more clearly. So let's take a look at those. Here's the first one. Nice, clear, sharp, because the train was standing still. You can even read the number painted on the side of the carriage. But look at the photograph on the left. This is an express train, and once again it's come out blurred. But notice how the background, the houses and the trees, are sharp. So we know that it's the movement of the train that has caused the picture to blur. Now let's try and work out exactly why. How long was David's shutter open for? If you remember, I said it opens for about 1/80th of a second every time the button is pressed. Now, 1/80th of a second doesn't sound very long, but even in that small fraction of a second, a train going at 70 miles an hour moves forward about 1/2 meter. This is what happened. When David pressed the shutter button on the camera, the train was here. But by the time the shutter had opened and closed, it had reached here. It wasn't long enough in any one place to register clearly on the film, and that's why the number of the train is just a blurred line in the center of the picture. What do you make of these people over here? They don't look blurred. Now, from what I've been saying, do you think they're sitting in the express? Well, whatever your answer, it should be pretty clear that with a simple camera like the one we've been using, we must think twice before taking pictures of really fast-moving things like trains and cars. Now, of course, it is possible to get sharp pictures of speeding cars and trains. This picture, for instance, was taken by a news photographer with an expensive camera. The shutter of his camera was only open for 1,000th of a second, and although the car's doing well over 100 miles an hour, you can see writing on the side of it quite clearly, and the blur is not enough to notice. We're now back to David and Kim's pictures, and here's quite a nice one. There's one train, two trains, and we can even see a third one in the background. 3 trains in the picture all at once, and we know something about them. None of them are blurred, so with David's simple camera, they must all have been standing still when the photograph was taken. But over here's an interesting one. It's come out rather dark. What happened here is there just wasn't enough light falling on the subject to have full effect on the film. Now, where does this leave us? Is there any solution to the problem of taking pictures in poor light? After all, we can see things perfectly clearly on cloudy days because our eyes have a mechanism built into them which adjusts to the light. The pupil of the eye, that's the round dark patch in the middle, acts as a window. In sunny conditions, the pupil is fairly small to protect the eye from the glare. But look what happens to the pupil in dim light. It gets much bigger to let in whatever light there is. Now, expensive cameras have something which copes with changes in light in just the same way. Something like this. It's called a variable aperture. Look, in bright sunshine, when there's a lot of light about, you set it so that the aperture, the hole, is fairly small. But in dark or cloudy conditions, when you need to make the most of what light there is, the aperture can be made nice and large. At one point, making the aperture larger or smaller doesn't change the size of your picture. It simply changes the amount of light getting through to the film. Very nice gadget to have on an expensive camera. But our simple model here doesn't have one of these. Its aperture is fixed. You can't alter it. So what's the solution for us? Well, basically, you've got to make sure that you don't take pictures on days when the weather's very dull. But if it's just a bit overcast, there is a way that a camera like this can help. Here on the front are 2 symbols. One obviously represents a bright, sunny day, and the lower one represents more cloudy conditions. Now, normally you take your pictures with the white dot at the sunny symbol. But if it does get a little bit overcast, you can move the dot on this ring round to the cloudy sign, and this makes the shutter stay open a little longer. In fact, about twice as long as normal. Now, this won't make an enormous amount of difference, but often it's enough to get you out of trouble, particularly if you're using color film. I think we've covered just about all the gadgets that you'd expect to find on a simple camera. It's not too difficult to understand how it works when you know what bits and pieces there are inside it. And by the way, don't let anybody tell you that something as big as this can't take pictures, because our camera here is peanuts compared to the sort of thing that some people like to use for their snapshots.